Well, at the GM meetings, plenty of teams are talking to the St. Louis Cardinals about a variety of the trade assets. But what about the Cardinals being on the aggressive and potentially adding? I know, it's pretty unlikely, but with the San Diego Padres potentially wanting to shave payroll, and one of the probably best ways to do that would be moving Fernando Tatis Jr. One local writer made the argument for the Cardinals to go after him. Do we think that Fernando Tatis Jr. is potentially a fit in St. Louis? We'll talk about that, the Brendan Donovan buzz, and more on this episode of Dealin the Cards. Welcome into Dealin the Cards, Josh and Sandy. Today we got no Andrew, but he'll be back here soon, I'm sure. He is not traded, in case you were wondering about that. So we are good on that end. And we're not shedding payroll either. I guess the Cardinals are too, but the Padres definitely might be. Hey, we're St. Louis Cardinals podcast, goes live twice a week over here on the YouTube channel. We've got Birds on the Farm with Sandy and Kareem as well to get your prospect coverage. If you're listening on audio, one of the things we'd love to encourage you to do today is, if you haven't already, rate and review the podcast. It actually helps us out a ton. And we've noticed, we got some email from Spotify that's like, hey, you need to plug that more because you should have more people reviewing based on listeners. So it's like, hey, we know we have a huge listening audience on audio. We really appreciate you. If you enjoy the podcast, it takes 2 seconds to rate and review, helps channel out, helps podcast out a ton. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, especially subscribe to the channel. Helps a ton. And as you're listening, comment down below, because we love to read through your comments and hear what you guys are thinking. But today I was anticipating us talking a lot about Brendan Donovan trade stuff. Also, hi from Mark from Flowery Branch, Georgia. I'm from Georgia originally, so it's fun to see a Georgia Southern down there. But I was confident we're going to talk about how Brendan Donovan's likely gone this offseason, and we're probably still going to talk about that plenty today and in plenty of episodes to come until he's traded. And then we have him on the Charity podcast, and it's like, hey, Donnie, how's it feel to be a Yankee? But we'll get to that. But then this Rob Rain story came out, and Sandy, I think we've texted maybe about it at one point, but I remember back when the Rafael Devers stuff happened. I love how the chat's like, Fernando Tatis Jr., what's the deal with that? I'm explaining. Back when the Devers stuff happened, one of my arguments for why I was like, Devers makes sense for the Cardinals is, how often does a player of that caliber hit the market where you can get them and they're discounted because the contract is so big that part of the incentive for that team is to move the money. That's how they got Arenado at a discount. That's how they got Goldschmidt at a discount. That's how they got Mark McGwire when they did. That's how Matt Holliday's a little bit different, but they went and were aggressive for Matt Holliday. That's how they got Scott Rowland and Jim Edmonds and good deals. So I've been part of the reason Devers made sense to me that the Cardinals should have at least called on it was because, when is this opportunity going to rise again? Well, you know what? It might have arisen again. Fernando Tatis Jr., there's no reporting out there that's saying that the Padres are for sure shopping him right now, but a lot of MLB national insiders are starting to look at this Padres situation even before the news today, which I'll share in a second, and say, man, the Padres payroll looking real bleak over in the future. They're not a major market, even though they're in San Diego. They're not LA. They're not New York. They've kind of outspent their market size for a little while now. They're over $200 million payroll. You've got a terrible Xander Bogaerts contract. A Manny Machado contract is just getting more expensive as he's aging. Yu Darvish makes a lot of money for someone who's not good anymore. They've got a lot of random mid players on big contracts. And if the Padres want to move money and not be bad, there's no way they move Machado and there's no way they move Bogaerts without just eating all the money or a ton of the money and getting nothing in return. And they could move Matsui, Laureano, guys like that, but you're not getting anything, and it's not a lot of salary relief. If they want to bring back a little bit of young talent or a little bit of talent for the current roster and move a ton of money, a lot of teams are looking at Fernando Tatis Jr. as a way to do it. Then the report came out today that the San Diego Padres are open to selling the franchise or bringing in investors because they've collected a ton of debt. They obviously, a few years ago, their owner died, and they've kind of changed philosophy a little bit here. Clearly, they're they feel like they're probably hemorrhaging money a little bit here. And so if they can't find a seller like the Minnesota Twins, they just started offloading a ton of talent. You've had other organizations do stuff like this when you're kind of in the process of changing ownership or rebuilding. You kind of just get rid of the money as best you can. That's where Fernando Tatis Jr. comes into the equation. Now, he has a no trade clause. Will the Padres even want to trade him? Who knows? If he gets traded, will St. Louis be a team he'd even be interested in? Who knows? But Rob Rains came out with the story today over an STL Sports page before the news broke, which is just such great timing on his end about the ownership situation. It was like, hey, could Tatis Jr. be the tentpole bat the Cardinals are looking for long term? And he basically detailed this case out about how mean, he's got a ton of money, so the Padres might want to move it. The Padres don't want to necessarily be bad either, so maybe they'd be a team that would take Sonny Gray and other assets. They can get some pitching on the roster. They can get some other young assets on the roster, and they move some money, but they're still competitive. And he said, well, the Cardinals make sense. And as I read it, I was like, man, you said the quiet part out loud where I've been like, like Tatis is fun, but I didn't even want to write about it. So I was like, I'll just get run through the coals from it. And then he did it. And we also know, like, for his father, Fernando Tatis, has ties to the St. Louis area, right? He was a Cardinal for a long time, hit 2 grand slams in 1 inning, which is incredible. Tatis was a guy that the Cardinals were in on in international free agency, and then they just kind of botched the deal on that one. He went to the White Sox instead, then was traded to the Padres in the James Shields deal. Anyways, there's the comments. So if you're confused why Fernando Tatis' name's popping up, trying to explain it now. That's kind of the backdrop of why this has come up today. And I just thought it was an interesting topic to talk about instead of, I mean, we'll talk about Brendan Donovan plenty this offseason, but let's do it. Sandy, with all that context,
man,
would it even be something the Cardinals should entertain? And then we'll get into why and the likelihood and all this. But do you think it's something the Cardinals should entertain?
Anytime you can bring in someone who, I mean, Tatis he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, just look at the numbers. They're ridiculous. He's going into his 7th season now. He's going to be 27 years old. He debuted at 20 in 2019 and was immediately a stud. He's got a career 868 OPS, a career 136 OPS plus. Now, he hasn't been quite as good since the injury and suspension in 2022, but he's still an MVP candidate pretty much every year. In 3 of his last 4 full seasons, he's had a WAR of 5 or greater, eclipsing 6 a couple times. I mean, he is one of the best players in baseball. He's a clear superstar. You want to put butts in seats, bring in Tatis, right? You want to win more games, bring in Tatis. It would be a ton of fun to see him come to St. Louis. So yeah, I mean, obviously the Cardinals can't not explore this. You've got to pick up the phone and call and just see what it looks like. You've got him locked up for a long time too. And if St. Louis is worried about losing premium talent to free agency, well, one way you guarantee that doesn't happen is you trade for someone that's already signed a long extension. If you trade for Tatis, you pretty much guarantee he's going to be here for a very long time, and you give yourself a great shot to be the team that he puts on the cap that he wears into the Hall of Fame. Like, that's pretty cool. That's legit stuff. It'd be really cool if the Cardinals would do something like that. All that aside, it does make a lot of sense from a baseball perspective too, I think, right? Like you said, he's going to be somewhat discounted. There are some concerns, and they're trying to move a huge contract. So those are 2 things that already make this more of a buyer situation than a seller's situation, or at least a buyer might look back and say, yeah, I'm really glad I was in on this. Just like I think Giants fans are going to say for a long time about the Devers trade. It'd be amazing. I would love it if they did. Do I think it'll happen? No. But do I wish it could? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, again, ultimately, do I think it's going to happen? Like, where we're at today, obviously it's like a very, very low percentage chance. And so we're kind of on the front end of a situation that may not even happen, because the Padres may be like, there's no shot we're trading for Fernando Tatis Jr. We'll do anything possible to not do that. That ends it. They could be like, hey, we'll trade for Fernando Tatis Jr., but Tatis has a list of 6 teams and the Cardinals aren't on it. That ends it. All the stars could align that could happen, and Bloom says we're not in on it. That ends it. So there's a lot of like dominoes that have to fall for this to become a real possibility. But if I'm being honest, there's probably times where the people, like very early on, when the whispers of Nolan Arenado were popping up, and which it took years for the deal to actually happen. I'm sure there are a lot of Cardinal fans who are like, there's no shot that's happening. Goldschmidt, I mean, did people really anticipate they were going to trade for Paul Goldschmidt? Giancarlo Stanton, they pulled off, like I've seen on Twitter, are the Cardinals, like, when have they ever traded for a $300 million contract? They traded for Giancarlo Stanton. Now, Miami was going to eat some of that money, and San Diego might have to eat a little bit of that money. But even if they don't, like, this is a different situation where you're talking about a guy who's a productive outfielder who's just won 2 platinum gloves, even though he didn't deserve this one for sure, and may not even deserve the other one, but he's still a gold glove level outfielder. Or it's not Stanton, where if the bat starts to wane, the value's not there. This is a guy who can play elite defense in the outfield and be an elite bat in your lineup. That is a true tentpole bat for you. You're talking about a guy whose contract's really not that crazy because they got him locked up early. You're talking about $20 million in 2026, 25 in 2027 and 2028. Then it jumps up into the $36 million range in 2029, and he's signed through his age 35 season, which again, not great. But whenever you lock up a guy super long term, there's always going to be back ends of the years of the deal that are not great. So it's like
we'd be getting the prime of the prime. We'd be getting him through ages 27 to 32. Those are the power
exactly.
years. That's the prime of your prime. It wouldn't shock me to see Tatis put up 30 WAR over those next 5 or 6 seasons. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be crazy at all. He's gonna have a Hall of Fame resume by the time he's 32.
Yeah. And I mean, he's already a, let's see, 26 and a half win player in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of his career. And one of them was an 84 game season. One of them was 2020 where he barely played at all. And then he missed the entire 2022 season because the PED suspension and his injury. And so like you're talking about a guy who's an elite of elite player. And again, we're not saying this is super likely, but like this is one of the rare scenarios that, and I think Bloom's talked about this, that they are open to doing things that are creative that are going to help them now as long as it accomplishes the future. And so like Kyle Tucker, I personally, I get why people really like Kyle Tucker, but I don't see him as elite at anything. Like he's not like an elite power hitter. He's not an elite contact hitter. He's a really good defender and a pretty good base runner, but I personally don't know if I love the idea of him aging super well. That's just me. And also you're talking about a guy,
career numbers are better than Tatis's.
I still think Tatis is a better player, like better talent.
Did you see what Kyle Tucker did last year with Houston in his last year there?
Yeah, he's had really like great years.
179 OPS plus, 5 WAR in 78 games. Like Kyle Tucker is otherworldly.
So, but I think Tatis has hit different heights. 2021 was almost a 7-win player. 2025 was a 6.1 win player. Tucker's never been worth more than 4.9 WAR in his career. And so he's a really, really good player who does things really, really. I'm not trying to act like Kyle Tucker's not a good player. I'm just saying I personally think Tatis is a bigger swing, and
I think Tatis' ceiling is higher. I think I agree with that.
Yeah, but then also he's a year younger. Again, there's the right-handed bat side of it, which I think matters because the Cardinals do have a lot of left-handed bats right now. They don't have that right-handed guy in the middle of the order. And then the other side of it too is like there is a difference in like when you're talking about Kyle Tucker, you're probably 35 a year for the next 10 years. So like $350 million for 10 years for Kyle Tucker and more. You're talking about Tatis doesn't make 36 million a year until his first year of that is 2029. So you're talking about the first 4 years, he's making $15 million less, $10 million a year, $10 million less at minimum, which matters, especially in these lean years of the rebuild. And I think it would be a really weird deal, I think, like to pull it off, because I think it could be a potential, like Rain's talked about, where maybe Sonny Gray's involved, but maybe you're also putting Brendan Donovan in there. And maybe there are a few prospects as well. But like we're talking about a guy that like the Cardinals have a lot of pieces. They don't have superstars. And so honestly, it's like you could move Gray and Donovan and all these guys for prospects that you hope turn into good players and like cross your fingers they're a superstar, but probably not going to happen. Or you could like move a collection of those pieces. Oh gosh.
Alex Girl says Tatis or Tucker would block Walker. No.
But you can move a bunch of those different pieces to go get a superstar instead in a situation. Again, like this is all theoretical. Like we're not saying like, oh, the Cardinals could do this today if they wanted to. It's like there's a lot of things at play. I'm just saying this is a really interesting thought exercise that the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is really interesting. Again, not trying to deplete Kyle Tucker. 4.9, 4.9, 4.9, 4.2, 4.5 WAR player.
Bring in Tatis, like who's the best? Is he the best player to wear a Cardinals uniform since Albert Pujols?
I think it really depends on how he continues his career. Because I mean, Nolan is I think Tatis is on track to be a Hall of Famer. Like Nolan's pretty much a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And so I think Nolan's better. And Goldie, I think, is a Hall of Famer. So I think it would depend a little bit more.
I think Tatis' ceiling, though, is Goldie won that MVP, which is awesome. But Goldie was somewhat limited as a first baseman who wasn't like by the time the Cardinals got him, he wasn't hitting more than 40 homers in a season. You know, he's a great bat, but he was a 280. I don't know. He was going to slug 550. You know, have an OPS in the upper 8s in a great year, maybe the lower 9s like he did in his MVP season. But I think Tatis can actually I think Tatis can actually win an MVP. It's it's hard right now with Shohei Ohtani DHing for the Dodgers. It's impossible to win an MVP. But Tatis can put up an MVP worthy season, you know?
Yeah. Which again, Kareem just pointed out too, and I was, as I was thumbing through too, because I was trying to rattle this off. Like it's a good point too. Like last year in 2024, Tucker put up 4.2 WAR in 78 games.
Yeah.
So like, he was on
Once
pace to have one of those
plus.
really high end seasons. So like, I'm not trying to act like Tucker's not a good player, but I am curious. Like, besides that year, tell me what his elite traits are. And I'm not saying he's not an elite player, but I'm saying I think he gets there by being like borderline elite or really, 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 really good at a lot of things.
That's fair.
And you can kind of argue that for Tatis too.
There's a lot of run production, I guess, from Tucker, but he also has played in really good Astros lineups. It's going to be hard to produce runs in St. Louis lineup right now.
So again, I'm not acting like Kyle Tucker would be a bad move by any means. I'm just saying I think they are a little bit different situations. I also like there's no shot Kyle Tucker signing in St. Louis.
That's
like,
the real thing. Like it's completely unrealistic. Yeah. Possible.
It's so like there's at least maybe a scenario where Tatis puts the Cardinals on his list like that. I personally think that's more likely than Kyle Tucker taking the highest offer and it being from the St. Louis Cardinals. Like I don't see that happening. But again, I think this is an interesting thought exercise. And I want to talk a little bit. So let's thank our sponsors real quick. And then I want to talk a little bit about like what this could look like. And then maybe jump into the more pressing news and more likely news of the day. And that's Brendan Donovan. Basically every team in baseball is interested in him. And we're going to have to say the farewell speech here soon, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, as always, we want to thank our presenting sponsor of the Dealin the Cards podcast. And that's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Fridays and 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. Have new selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league. Make sure you go check them out. Hey, maybe they've got some Fernando Tatis cards you want to check out before he's a Cardinal. But just kidding. Probably won't happen. But we always love 314. They always have great deals going on there. They also sell other merchandise as well beyond, like different side memorabilia or in-game stuff that's super fun to get. Make sure you check out 314. Let them know we sent you. And then, as always, too, even if baseball's over, there are plenty of different kinds of sporting events, concerts, and things you can attend this winter. And if you use our code NEWTNEWS over at SeatGeek, you can get $20 off a purchase of $50 or more on their website. So again, you can go to a concert, you can go to a college football, college basketball game, NBA, NFL, any kind of event you can find in SeatGeek. You can use this code NEWTNEWS to get money off. So as we kind of move into the rest of the pod here, oh man, Kareem, we have a plan for if Donnie's traded before the charity stream. We'll have a rally, that's for sure. I guess it's kind of hard to ask this in the moment too, but like, what do you think the Padres would want for Fernando Tatis Jr.?
Well, I mean, if their primary goal is to move the money, right, they're not going to be wanting to take on long-term money. So the good thing is the Cardinals don't really have long-term contracts. So it's not like you're trading a bad contract for.
They wouldn't want Arenado.
Yeah. So I think right away, like if you're the Cardinals taking on that money, the problem is you're probably trying to move money too. They're already trying to move money. So I think it would make sense to be sending Gray back, because it's a 1-year commitment that the Padres are probably much happier with than the 40 plus million that they're going to be owing Tatis starting in 2030-ish, right? Or 35 or whatever. So I think that makes sense. And then I think you're right. I think it turns into Brendan Donovan is going to be headed out, and then probably more. I think you're maybe looking at moving out with like a Josh Baez. Maybe I don't think it costs you JJ Weatherholt. I think that's one of the really appealing things here for Cardinals and Cardinals fans, right? Like I think you could actually get this done while holding on to like your prize possession.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to cost you. It's definitely going to cost you a lot of capital. I think you're going to be, Josh's audio might be out real quick, but I think you're going to be looking at, if I had to just spitball and put this together, let's say Brendan Donovan is gone. Let's say Sonny Gray is gone. Let's say Josh Baez is gone. Let's say maybe they want Tank Hence as like a flyer or something. And there still might be more. Maybe they're asking for Alec Burleson in addition to Donovan. I think that lightens the load. Otherwise, I could see the Padres saying, well, if we move on from Tatis, but we have Gray for this 1 year, he kind of replaces Dylan Cease for you in some way. So maybe they're still trying to run it back and win this year. So they want Burleson right now to produce in their lineup. Maybe there's something like that. I think if they did that, though, they could get away with holding most of their minor league talent. Like, I would make that move. I think I would do that. I don't know if the Padres would.
Yeah, I do think there's a line to where then it starts to become like throw up and too early, where again, like I said with Devers, when's the next guy going to pop up? Well, Tatis might be popping up, and like it might take 3 or 4 more years for another random situation like this to pop up. But there becomes a point where I think it's the Cardinals would need to bow out, and I think
Absolutely.
if it was, I mean, if they're hell bent on moving Brendan Donovan, and if they're wanting to move Sonny Gray, I think those two plus, like you said, definitely not Weatherholt Doyle, but like if Baez is in there and something else, then I think it becomes really interesting. Because there's a world where you quote unquote lose this deal where you gave up Brendan Donovan and Sonny Gray, and then Josh Baez pops off as like an all-star level player, and it's like that's really hard. But then you're still like, if Tatis is a superstar, you're not really feeling bad about it. And I also think it's part of the like, and this is where going back to Kareem's comment about Kyle Tucker. You're talking about how good he was. He wasn't saying the Cardinals should sign Kyle Tucker. But my point against going against Kyle Tucker is I don't know if the Cardinals, when they're ready to spend, they're going to be able to sign a player of this caliber. And so the trade market may be the way to go do that. And so if it doesn't cost you Weatherholt Doyle, Raynel Rodriguez, like those are the 3 guys I'm like, there's no shot I'm trading one of those guys right now because of where the Cardinals are on the rebuild. If you're like in contention, World Series contention, it's maybe a different story. But if it costs a combination of major league talent and prospects, kind of like the Juan Soto trade.
Yeah, you're not making that.
Though not one, or I'm saying the Juan Soto from San Diego to New York trade, where they got like Michael King. They got a couple prospects in there.
And they flipped him for Cease, I think.
Yeah, so like there was like an interesting combination of major league ready players along with prospects. I think I'm open to it. And I think that's kind of what the Padres would want to look at, but it's all too early to tell. So
I can't imagine the Padres wanting to take only prospects back in this. Like, it's got to be MLB ready talent because Machado's just getting older and worse. Bogarts is just getting worse. Darvish is just getting older, right? Like they need to win now. Their window's still open. They could hold on to Tatis and be a good team next year and make the playoffs, which is why they might not even trade him in the first place. But I think if they do move him just for money reasons to save themselves in the future, they want to win now. Plus, they got to make this back.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. It's all theoretical. I want to throw that out there because it's something different to talk about. And I think it at least tells like the Cardinals at this stage should not be overly aggressive with anything like this, but they should be opportunistic. So if the right deal falls, like the stars align, which the stars would truly have to align for something like this to happen, I say be in on it. If not, stay the course, right? There's no shortcuts. Bloom's talked about that and preached that. This could very easily become a shortcut if they got too aggressive with it. But if the right situation pops up, go for it. So real quick, I want to pivot to the Brendan Donovan side of things real quick. So I want to cry. Just kidding. I'm not going to cry. But I think it's pretty clear Brendan Donovan's probably not a St. Louis Cardinal next year, which is really sad. Now, I've said, and I think you've said this too, like if they get the right offer, sure. Like there's not like Brendan Donovan's not truly untouchable. I've not necessarily believed that Donovan would be getting that kind of offer though. But when you see the kind of reporting coming out there from national and local insiders of like, yeah, like all of baseball wants Brendan Donovan, and and there's a lot of people who are like really want Brendan Donovan, and that a lot of people see him as like a top piece to get. Like, this is why I've said he's not just a complimentary player. He is not a superstar. He's not a star, but he's better than a complimentary player. He's in that weird tier of players that there's not a lot of them, but they're truly a difference maker, but they're not quite.
The very best of Marwin Gonzalez is what Donovan can do for you, but better.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because I feel like I heard him once described as like a true championship piece, like a super utility, can play anywhere, can do it all at a high level, and he's going to be able to hit. And that's
there's a difference between someone like that and Tommy Edman. Like, to me, like Tommy Edman's a really, really good, like, honestly, actually, Edman might be the low end of that kind of player of Brendan Donovan, but even that, I don't necessarily think so. I think Brendan Donovan is truly like a unique class of player that is going to be really good for a long time, is more than a complimentary piece. And when he's healthy, and he has struggled with injuries, like, but when he's healthy, this dude breaks. One of the best left-handed bats in baseball, honestly, which people just don't talk enough about. But that's why the Yankees, that's why the Royals, apparently, that's an interesting one, which I'm like, I don't know if I see the fit. I'm like, we could literally name like 20 teams out there that could be interested. What do you think about the market right now? Like, are you encouraged by it? Do you think the Cardinals could get a lot in return from Brendan Donovan?
I mean, I think they can. I think I'm with you. Like, I think I just like Donovan a lot. And I think when I think he's going to be traded now. And when the notification comes across my screen and I read it, I think there's probably a 90 to 95% chance I go, that's it, really? Oh. Like, I just think I'm going to be disappointed. I'm preparing myself for that reality. Obviously, something crazy could happen and they could get a huge return for him, but I just am preparing myself to be disappointed because I think that's what's going to happen. I think there's very little that the Cardinals could get back where I'd be like stoked that they traded Brendan Donovan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in between that where I still lean that I think there's a good chance you look long term. You're like, man, I wish I just would have had Brendan Donovan on an extension. But I am more encouraged now by the idea that I think they could get something real in return. I'm guessing what'll probably like I think the good scenario or best case scenario here is probably what you said of when the trade comes through, it's not flashy, but ends up being a really good deal where they targeted some kind of arm that's not like some huge prestige. They don't have major league track record already, but they end up being Cam, what's his face?
Cam Schlittler.
Yeah, like that kind of player. Where it's like going into the season, like if you told me the Cardinals acquired him, I'd be like, oh, I didn't know a lot about him, wasn't like super high on him, and then he ends up being like a
Not like
great young arm.
Like that.
Yeah, and so like today, like if you told me they can get Cam, I'd be like, yeah, it probably makes sense for them to trade Brendan Donovan. Even though I don't really want it, it's like, okay, I can see it. So I think it's like targeting that kind of thing. I do wonder though, like Bryce Miller from the Mariners, like is that something? I know he wasn't good this past year, but he's had really good years.
Yeah, he's been fine. If they're gonna go get, he's been good. But if you're gonna move on from Brendan Donovan, I don't think Bryce Miller has like the true upside. Like he's not Brian Wu. I mean, Brian Wu's really, really good. But at no point in time was Bryce Miller ever in the same tier as Brian Wu in terms of
upside. But like you're not going to get it. You're not going to get someone that for sure, like that everyone's like that guy has the upside to be an ace unless they're really far away from St. Louis.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's where I'm like, anyways, that's where it is a weird market for me, and I'm not totally sure. I love the idea of it. But yeah,
Bryce Miller was awful this year though. 5.68 ERA.
Yeah, he was really bad.
He was horrendous, and he was good last year, but the stats under the hood weren't nearly as good as and first year he was fine, like 4.3 ERA. Like if the Cardinals go out and get like a number 4 for Brendan Donovan, I'm gonna be like fine with it. And a number 4 on another team might be the Cardinals too next year. The rotation's that bad, but I'd rather them like take a real shot at somebody farther away. To be honest, I'd rather them like bring together real talent.
Yeah. So as we wrap up real quick, just what are two or three teams you would name to watch for Brendan Donovan in a trade?
You got to watch the Yankees. I feel like they've been linked to Brendan Donovan for a long time, and sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So I'd watch them. Man, they're not going to.
I'll throw one out. I've been saying Mariners since I said Bryce Miller. I really feel like the Mariners have circled the Cardinals. Like everyone circled those two together for a long time. Whether it's him or like Bryce Miller or it's some of their prospects down in the minor leagues that like have some really high upside. Like I don't think Cade Anderson is someone they would trade for Brendan Donovan, but like could it be that kind of guy? Could it be Logan Evans? There's like another guy from there breaking on.
Very excited.
So again, I don't think that's what it would be, but like I feel like the Mariners, they're losing a ton of bats on free agency, and they had a Cal Riley like otherworldly season. Is he going to be that same guy again? And then Kareem pointed out Matt Pierpont came from Seattle. Is there arms he likes there? I can see Seattle.
I wonder maybe an AL Central team. Like I think the Tigers or the Guardians would make some sense.
Yeah, the Guardians have been linked, and then now the Royals too.
They need to bat really bad, and they've got playoff talent. They've got a lot of young pitching that's still good. They figure it out every year. I know Tanner Beebe's not coming back, but maybe an arm like him who's a few years away, that'd be kind of cool. Or the Tigers, especially. I mean, the Cardinals aren't going to be like Donovan's not part of a Skubal trade or anything like that, but they're going to be active this offseason.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say to this, and then we'll wrap up for today's pod, and we'll be back this weekend. But Taylor brings up a great point. I feel like that's where, to your point, like it's got to be something that you got to like. If 20 plus teams want Brendan Donovan, he's one of the top trade candidates, and you don't get really good value for him, that's a failure by the front office. So Cardinals got to be in on it. We'd love to see the names you throw out there. I think next episode we'll start looking at specific targets for the Cardinals in either free agency or the trade market, kind of based on the weekend. But we'll kind of see what goes on from there. But as always, like and subscribe helps channel a ton. If you're listening on audio, rate, review the podcast, helps us out a lot. We really appreciate the support. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thanks, Heim.